something a little bit different. Usually I play music and diamond paint, but today we're gonna do a little story time. This is disgusting. I think it's time to throw this one away. It's really just a whole bunch of old putty that I refuse to let go of. Um, I think I'm gonna start from the other side though. It's a really good putty or wax is what this is. It's a really good wax. It's a goner. Anyways, so for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Mermaid. I'm an artist. I do a lot of different things. I'm a multipreneur, IT background, yada yada yada. Let's get into the story. First of all, let's get our diamond straight. I am going to need my blues. I think I'm going to use tweezers today. All right, so let's get into the story. So once upon a time, I dated a homeless man. Okay, I was in a. I'm not even gonna make excuses for it. This is around the pandemic, honestly. I think a little after the pandemic, this might have been like around 2022. Um, so let's get into it. So I went to high school with these girls. We'll say T, right? So me and T went to high school, and this is I'm giving you guys the backstory for how I met this man. So me and T went to high school together. We were somewhat close friends in high school. We both had the same exact personality. We were like the same person. She was literally like my alter ego. That's how I viewed T. Um, so of course you graduate high school. People don't really keep in touch. We were always friends on Facebook or whatever. So whatever. Well, what ended up happening was T uh had a brother. Now, when we were in high school, I always thought T had. There was this boy who always claimed to be T's brother. Um, and so when I thought that was her legitimate brother, I later found out that was not the case. Now, this young man, I was like, they don't really look like him, but they have the same last name. So I'm just like, okay. And it popped up and suggested friends. So I had friended him for a while. This is my ex. I would like, okay, so to explain, um, D, which is my ex, D, he basically, and for anybody who's coming in, I'm giving this story of the time I dated a homeless man. It's a lot going on. Okay. Uh, so me and T, like I said, we're cool in high school. We have the same exact birthday. We both are Pisces. Pisces gang gang. Okay, and we were cool in high school. Of course, people grow apart. I was on Facebook. This suggested friend popped up. I noticed that him and T had the D and T had the same last name. So I'm like, okay, um, that's interesting. So I ended up hitting him up one day and I was like, hey, are you related to T somehow? And he was like, oh yeah, I'm her brother. And I was like, that's strange because you don't look like the dude who we went to high school with. And he was like, oh yeah, he's like, my sisters used to do this thing where they would have play brothers. He said because his mom would take practically anybody in. And so if someone needed a place to stay or they were going through hard times with their parents, his mom would let them stay with them. And they did that to a lot of people. And he was like, basically, he said, I'm their only brother. He said, but they don't really claim me. And I was like, okay, that was kind of odd. So anyways, I continue on. Basically this dude goes into like how his family really don't mess with him, da 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 da. And it was like a sob story. So I was like, okay, well, I didn't ask you all that. I just asked you, was you their brother or whatever. Now I know. I was like, it's kind of odd that they would do that, but okay. I later will find out why. So I'll go on. If y'all can tap the screen, like the screen. If you want to subscribe, you can. Send some gifts if you want to. I don't really care. Anyways, so um, for anybody who's new to this channel, I am very real raw. I am a Pisces, and I just really am unfiltered. I got the bubble guts right now, so if I gotta get up at some point, it is what it is. Trying to eat AST the chicken salad, baby. Got my stomach jumping. Okay. Anyways, so Time goes on, we become friends, we're hanging out. It's not even on some dating stuff. We would meet up. I didn't have a car. I'm narcoleptic, so I don't drive. So I would meet up with him at this Amelie's bakery area, and we would just hang out and just be chilling. This is after like a couple months of talking to each other. I was like, he was like, we should hang out, and I was like, okay, cool. Now he didn't have a car, I didn't have a car. Baby, we both was broke as all get out. I think I was going through. I think I had just been laid off or something like that. So baby, I was going through it. Okay, I was just trying to grab whatever scraps I could get. I'm not even gonna hold you. I was living with my mama. I had moved back in with my mama. It was a lot going on. Um, and a post college graduate thinking, oh, things will get better, or oh, I should have a job by now, baby. It was bad. I should have stayed my butt in Ohio and made a way out of no way. Anyways, so D is the name of the ex. We're gonna call my ex D, because that's what his name starts with. So D and I, at first, it was just a platonic relationship. And he was always, every time I seen him, he had a Bible with him. So I was like, oh, this is like a godly man. You know what I'm saying? He's a good guy, right? He was unlike any homeless man I have ever met, and I've met a lot of homeless people, y'all. I'm one of the people. I go out to the community. I have these conversations with homeless people. I don't care nothing about you, human, just like I'm human. I don't care nothing about that. Now, if they off there and they rock her a little bit, that's a little bit different. But anyways, so we're meeting up, we're hanging out. Like I said, every time I saw him, he had a Bible with him. Now, our first interaction, when I did first meet him, he was living in. I'm going to stick around. I love these, and it's been a hard day. My partner went to jail today for it. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, Mason. Oh my gosh, sweetie, I'm so sorry. That is horrible. Um, I don't have an opinion about whether or not you're gonna hold this person down. That's none of my business. But I feel for you. Um, I've been there, done that. Been there, done that, babes. It didn't work out for me too well. Um, I so come and we're gonna go into that mess, and you're gonna find out it's gonna be some similarities. So at one point, he had a record. He was a felon, and I didn't know he was a felon. Not that I really cared, because it's like, what you gonna do to me? I'm very well protected. Like, nobody's gonna do anything to me. Anyways, so he goes on or whatever. We're meeting up, and he's not really giving me a sob story. He's very silent. He mostly just listened to me talk, y'all. It was basically somebody to vent to. Um, I think the times we met up, like I said, multiple times at Amelie's or whatever, and I was always buying. I never had an inkling that this man was homeless, because he, the stereotypical, if you at the time, I hadn't had many interactions with homeless individuals. I will be honest. At that time, like back in 2022, I was not up in their face. Okay, this is like, I think maybe a year after COVID. Okay, everybody's starting to come out a little bit. Okay, they scared, but they still coming out. Like, I'm like, this is amazing. Nobody's out here. No places are full. Parking wasn't a thing, because like I said, I wasn't driving. But well, I tell you, COVID was the best and worst thing that happened to people, because when I was a street photographer at the time. So me being a street photographer, I like to go out, I like to take pictures, and it was always hard to take pictures uptown. For anybody who's ever been to North Carolina, if you've ever been to Charlotte, it was always hard to take pictures uptown, because it gets so busy during the daytime, because people are just constantly moving around. So to see it be like serene and nobody be outside, and the animals started coming out like crazy. Anyways, y'all, I got a little bit of ADHD. I did not take my medicine today. I'm not going to work, so I'm not taking it. Oh well. Anyways, so that was that. Like I said, we were hanging out. Now, the first time that we actually had like an interaction, I think it was probably like he was staying with his cousins at the time, so he wasn't actually necessarily homeless at this point. He was staying with his cousins, and I just didn't like how his cousins was treating him. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is horrible. Like, the way they used to talk to him, girl, they used to be yelling at him, like, oh, F you, da da da. You got auntie sitting here worried about you, and da 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 da. Because he used to just do stuff without even thinking about how other people felt or how it would affect his family. He would just do random stuff. He was way older than me. Like I think at that time was I 21 at that time? I think I may have been 23 and he was like 28, 29, something like that. I don't know. Something like that. I forgot how many years apart we were. But yeah. So I'm like, okay. Um, so I decided that I was going to continue to entertain this. I didn't really see it going nowhere. It things move fast. I literally was found myself trying to move out of my mama's house. Because what happened was let's get into that story. It's a little side note. So I was staying with my mom. I was staying with my older sister during the pandemic. Okay, my older sister ended up having a mental breakdown, and she ended up deciding that she didn't want me to stay at her house no more. All because I left the house without saying goodbye to her. And so apparently she was on like antidepressants and I didn't know. And I'm like, I would think my mom knew but didn't say anything. And I'm like, I would think that you would tell me something like that because I mean, I do got to live with this girl. Well, my mom knew and didn't say anything. My sister, I would wake up, my sister would be sitting staring into the dark. It was crazy. It was crazy. She would wait, she'd just be staring into the dark, y'all. It was so creepy. It was like she was possessed or something. And like, I remember one morning I came in and I turned on the light and she was like, can you turn the light off? Like immediately. It's how she said it though. Like, y'all, I think she was getting possessed with something. And that ain't my first time seeing my sister possessed. That's all I'm saying. My first time seeing her possessed. Okay. Anyways, so what seems like possessed? It could just be a mental breakdown, baby. It's giving demonic to me. Anyways, so and I was like, no, because mind you, I just paid her rent. I just signed the lease. Like we weren't even 5 or 10 days into the lease renewal, y'all. So I had asked to move into the bigger room because she gave me this baby room that was small as crap. And it's like, yo, I got too much stuff to be in that room. I need a bigger closet. She didn't really want me in the other room. She claimed like she didn't want me to have stuff everywhere, but it's like it's not like you're even using the room. Initially, when I moved in, she had a roommate, but that roommate ended up moving out. The roommate ended up moving out. She tried to sneak and move out and not tell my sister. And I just happened to be home one day, and she was like, "This the roommate. We'll call her C." And C just so happened to be trying to sneak and move out because my sister called me and was like, "Why do you keep going in and out?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "I've been in bed. I just woke up. Like, what are you talking about?" She was like, "Oh, okay." She said, "Well, I think C is trying to move out." I said, "Well, what makes you think that?" She was like, "I mean, she just keep opening the close." Oh no. Before she called me, I was already at the house. C came to the house with boxes, and she was expecting that nobody. She was thinking that nobody would be there. She thought I would be at work, but really, I just slept in because I didn't have to be at work till like 1 o'clock. And so she was like, oh, and I was like, hey, and she was like, oh, I thought you would be at work. I was like, no, I don't go to work till like 1:30. And she was like, oh, I thought you would be gone by now. Okay. She just made it super awkward. So I knew she was up to something. I was like, and she was like, well, what time do you go to work? I said 1:30. She was like, oh, okay. And she went upstairs and proceeded to pack her stuff. She was trying to sneak out. She was basically breaking the lease without telling my sister because my sister was renting out a room to her. So, honey, that girl left, owed my sister probably over 4,000 something dollars to this day. My sister couldn't find her or didn't know where she moved to serve her. But she broke the lease and then told my sister. And my sister was like, if you wouldn't have been here, I would have been messed up because my sister was out of work. She was also going through depression because she wasn't working. And she was like, I would have been messed up. She was like, I thought we were friends or whatever. She was like nothing has changed about the situation just because you moved in. There hasn't been any distance. I don't know why she did this. Da 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 da. She tried to at one point. She was trying to determine whether or not she was gonna sue the girl, but once again, she couldn't even find her enough to be able to serve her. So that girl was gone in the wind. Anyways, so once my sister got depressed that one day and she kicked me out, I was like, all right, bet. But I mean, I told my mom, I said, I'm calling the police. I said, because I just signed a whole lease and gave you 500 something dollars. You about to run me my money. And my mom was like, no, no, no. Like, mermaid, it's not like you don't have nowhere to stay. You can come here. It's not like you're gonna be homeless. Like, if your sister don't want you there, just leave. Now, before I left, my mom sat me and my older sister down and she told my older sister, she was like, look, Now you know if you go through with this, like your sister never gonna talk to you again. Like y'all relationship when, or at least y'all relationship will never be the same, right? And she was like, yeah, I know. She was like, yeah, I know. And so that was it. And that was the beginning of the end of me and my older sister relationship. Like I don't even talk to her now. She tries to like act like she's helping me no, you can't do nothing for me, baby. December I had surgery or whatever, and I know this is supposed to be about my ex, but it all ties together. You're gonna see how it ties together. And I stayed with her or whatever, and I had surgery, on my hoo ha. And so I was trying to avoid cervical cancer or whatever, and she stressed me the fuck out. Like I literally almost ended up having a fucking mental breakdown. It was bad. Anyways, so left the sister's house, went and moved in with my mama. Now, unbeknownst to me, my mom was living with her ex boyfriend at the time. My mom was married, but she was living with her ex boyfriend at the time. And apparently they had something going on. Now, I thought she was just living with this man. Her husband knows about this. Her and her husband were separated. They were about to get a divorce. And so she was like, bump it. So, her ex had moved in with her. She claims, and so when she was like, "Oh, this is my house. You can move in," and I'm just like, "Ma, you need to let him know something. You need to let him know something, because this is not gonna go over well. This man is not gonna be okay with me just popping up trying to move into the house." Especially when at that time I ended up getting a job with Spectrum, and I'm just like, look, like I'm making enough money to pay rent. I was going to move before I moved in with my sister. I was actually going to move right up the street from my job because my job was like, if you late one more time, we're gonna fire you. Like you gonna be gone. And this is during the pandemic. Actually, it's not that together. It wasn't after the pandemic. It was during the pandemic. So, because I was an essential worker, so I'm like, okay, like yes, this is during the pandemic. So I'm just like, all right, whatever. So I was making plans. My sister was like, no, you should just come stay with me. It'll be extra income for me, and it'll be more money for you. Child, my sister went into, oh, I don't need you, you need me. She ended up getting a job, and she got the big head. And not soon after kick me out. She got a job offer and was like, you can go live with mommy. You ain't got to stay here. All because I walked out the house and did not say goodbye. Any other morning, she texted me a long paragraph, like when I was on the highway, like literally up the street from my job, and was like, any other day you call me, or any other day you tell me, love you, bye. Today you didn't tell me that. You don't have to be here. I don't have to take this. I don't have to deal with this attitude. This is like, what the fuck are you talking about? I literally left because she was trying to tell me to turn off the lights. And bitch, if I'm paying fucking bills, you're not about to tell me to turn off shit. You're not about to tell me I can't turn on the damn lights. I just paid you $500. You just got $500 in cash from me, and I just signed a whole nother lease. You're not about to tell me I can't turn on the fucking lights to fucking cook in the kitchen. Get the fuck out of here. Anyways, so I told my little sister. My little sister was like, she just doing that because it's you. She said, me and my girlfriend used to be in there, had the lights on all the time. She ain't never, not one time, say nothing to either one of us. She said, so she just doing that because it's you. Anyways, moved in with my mom and her ex-boyfriend. That ended up being a hell whirlwind. This man was mentally unstable still. So this was the ex-boyfriend at the time in, I think, 2020, 2021. This was a ex-boyfriend that my mom had dated maybe 11 years prior. And I guess they rekindled. There was at one point in time my mom went missing and we couldn't figure out where she went, and she was at her ex's house. During the time, at one point, when I was living with my mom and her husband, which was in a house that was purchased that ended up getting foreclosed on, baby, it was a lot going on. So how my mama ended up in the house with the ex-boyfriend was because her home almost got foreclosed on because her husband had a gambling addiction and walked away and left. Or no, he was actually still there. My mom left. She left the house and we didn't know where she moved to. We didn't know where she was at. I was living with my stepdad at the time, and I'm just like, yeah, you seen my mom or heard from mom? He said, no, she won't talk to me because their houses that they built from the ground up was about to get foreclosed on. And he didn't say anything. He was literally hiding the phone calls. He was hiding the mail. So he was deleting the voicemails and stuff so she wouldn't know. Anyways, long story short, my mom, the situation with the ex-boyfriend didn't work out. Dude was still crazy. He tried to get my mom evicted out of a home where she was the primary lease, claiming that she was abusive. Which this man was literally 600 pounds, y'all. 600 pounds and maybe 6'6", maybe 6'5". My mom is all of maybe 170 pounds soaking wet. My mom is all of 5'8", like, or 5'7". Like, that's crazy. So this man talking about some, oh, she was threatening me, da 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 da, and da da. Anyways, my little cousin had passed away. It was a lot going on. We are going to get to the story of the homeless man, y'all, but this you got to understand. At the time when all this happened, I ended up when I met D, which is the ex. This is what was all going on, and I have to put the scenario in place so you can understand everything. So it got to the point things was getting, or at some point the ex moved out. Um, we did some things, made some things happen, and he had to get the fuck out. He was obsessed with my mom and tried to get the police involved. Like I said, tried to get her evicted. And when he was just listed as, he wasn't even listed as a tenant. She was the tenant, and he was just somebody who she was subletting to. Because this was like a 5-bedroom house, and I kept telling my mom, like, what do you need a 5-bedroom house for? Like, that's you don't need a 5-bedroom. You're one person. And she was like, well, no, I have all my stuff and I don't want to have my stuff in storage. So I'm just going to get this 5-bedroom. So I was like, bump it. If she got 5 bedrooms, I'm about to go over there after my sister kicked me out. Bad idea. Anyways, their relationship kind of came to a demise because I moved in and he was unaware and he felt like she had betrayed him. New Yorkers be so over dramatic. I'm not even trying to be funny, but a lot of New Yorkers be over dramatic. Um, I'm in North Carolina, so this is just New York is just be dramatic as fuck. Anyways, so he felt some type of way and felt like she had betrayed him and put a strain on their relationship. And yeah, after he got the police involved to try to get her evicted, their relationship was over. Soon after, my stepdad came out of nowhere, out of no man's land, and moved back in after he moved out. So I'm seeing mail come for my mom's ex-boyfriend, Jay, and I'm just like, I know my stepdaddy see this mail. I know he ain't fucking blind. But my mom had banned him from checking the mailbox because that's, essentially how he, even though we didn't own the house that we were in, we were just renting. That's essentially how he got away with like not telling her about the foreclosure that happened to the old house. So she banned him from using the house phone or to even touching the house phone, and she banned him from checking the mailbox. So we would check the mailbox, or I would check the mailbox, and of course see that her ex was still getting mail there. And my mom was like, "He doing it on purpose." My mom was like, "He done been moved out. It's been months since this man has moved out." My mom said he got his mail still coming here because he want to make sure ain't no other man here, but ain't none of his business who here or whatever. So y'all, it was a mess. It was so ghetto. Anyways, so it was a big mess. My mom be doing stuff, and I just be like, "Child, I can't with you." But yeah, so her and my stepdad got back together, decided they were gonna work it out. Then they started to fall out again. Towards the end, my mom was trying to make me feel like I was a burden, and oh, they were trying to move it to a house because the rent was going up from I think 1,400 to 1,600 or something like that, or maybe 1,500 to 1,800, some type of weird jump for the property. And she was like, well, I can't afford that. So she was like, we gone. So they moved out or whatever. They moved into a new house. Before they could move out, I decided I was going to move out because things were going well with me and D. My mom had met D. My stepdad had met D. We were just friends at the time, though. We weren't even together. It wasn't till me and him ended up, hooking up at his cousin's house that, it was like, all right. I told him, I said, look, I don't know what you got going on, but that's when I found out that he was homeless. It had been like a year into our friendship, and I found out that he was actually homeless. And I was like, look, I never bothered to ask because none of my business what you do, where you be at. But I was like, look, especially if you're not my man. At the time, he wasn't my man. And it wasn't until I was with my mom that I started to realize like this. I just finally asked him. I said, "Are you homeless?" I said, "Because you're always outside. You're never inside. If you are inside, it's at your cousin's house." But basically, he was with me. His cousin ended up kicking him out because he wasn't doing anything. He wasn't trying to work. He just wanted to mooch off people. And that should have been my first red flag, but I ignored it. I completely ignored it. I should have known better. Um, yeah, I should have known better, but I didn't listen to my intuition. But ladies, listen to your intuition. When something is off about somebody, this man was living in a field in front of a church. Now, I was thinking he was hotel hopping at first, but come to find out, his aunt worked at a hotel and was giving him rooms. She was giving him rooms or whatever because she worked at the hotel or whatever. So I was thinking that he was living there. And at one point, come to find out, no, he was living in a field in front of a church. And the person who owned the field had came to cut grass one day and told him that he could stay there. So he was living in the field, no shelter, no nothing. The shelter that he was seeking was actually under the church overhang in the back of the church. So, um, I was like, "Did this church know you be?" He said, "Well, they know I be around here, but they know I don't do anything. I don't bother anybody." So, but yeah, for him to be a homeless individual, he never stank. His breath never stank. It was weird. It was like, how are you? It's not like you going to Planet Fitness and like actually showering. Because I was like, if you weren't actually showering, then how don't you stink? He said, honestly, I don't know. He said, I honestly don't know. And I'm just like, he said, I just feel like the Lord has covered me and protected me, and I don't have to go through that. And that, take note of that, because that will be a constant theme of I don't have to go through what everybody else is going through because the Lord is covering me. Da 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 da. Anyways, that was a constant theme throughout the relationship. So we move on or whatever. I found myself moving out of my mom's house. I got my first sublet, or not sublet, but I subleased a room from a random lady in a 2 day time span, y'all. Because my mom was trying not to tell me that she was going to move. She was agitated with the process of trying to get the house or whatever, and she was claiming I was holding them up. And I was like, baby, if you feel that way, and things is like hot and cold with you and my stepdad, I don't have to be here. I made enough money and had stacked up enough money to put down a deposit and go somewhere else. I don't have to live with you. Like, but she switched up. Like I said, she was one way when her ex boyfriend was there. Then she completely switched up when my stepdad moved back in and she was trying to be parent of the year. And it's just like, ma'am, you let me stay out to 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and she called me and be like, "Are you coming home?" And I'd be like, "Yeah." And then I catch an Uber back home. But I was laid up and everything, and she knew where I was at. She was me at one point. She knew exactly what I was doing. She did not care. But then, like I said, she switched up, and I was like, I'm not with this. Like, y'all going grocery shopping, not even telling me y'all going grocery shopping. You know I don't drive. I'm sitting here having to take a Uber up the street when you could just tell me, hey, I'm going grocery shopping. Do you need anything, or do you have any money, or do you want me to get anything while I'm there? You could. It's just so simple. And so she stopped doing everything, and I was like, oh no, you got me messed up. And that was like it just added a stake into our relationship. Like, nah, this ain't gonna work. So I moved in with the new landlord or whatever, which is a whole situation in itself. So this landlord in particular, she would go to Barbados a lot. And she told me she had a quote unquote cousin in Barbados who she would be with, and she worked remote from home. So I'm like, okay, cool. Now, me and D is basically staying in motels at this point. I'm paying for him to stay in motels, and he would do odd jobs. And I told him, I said, hey, it got to the point I was like, look, if we're gonna be together, you need to have a job, and you need to have some consistent income, because you just not about to be mooching off of me, living off of me, baby. And so he was like, okay, no problem. So he started working as a lumberjack, which is the most oddest job because he was so lanky. But anyways, he started job hopping or whatever, doing odd jobs for different people. He started bricklaying and doing masonry and stuff like that. Anyways, so the landlord at the new place was like, look, I'm gonna be real with you. She was like, you can have guests, people can spend the night, but they can't stay no more than 3 nights. And so I was like, okay. So what me and D was doing was mind you, at this point, he's still out in the field for the most part. Once we couldn't afford, the only time that he was really in the motels or like those, you know how you have a motel that can turn into like basically now what they're doing to a lot of old hotels, they turn them into apartment complexes or they're making them like apartment rooms or whatever. So that's what he was doing. He was renting a room from the, and you pay for a certain amount of nights, and then after a certain amount of nights, he would go back to the field in front of the church. And so I just went ahead and bought him a tent. And he was like, "No, no, I don't need that." I'm like, "No, yes, you do. Because if it rains or it thunderstorms, you can't come over here. You got to be over there. So you got to be in the field." I mean, he was under this giant tree or whatever. It was a lot, child. Anyways, so of course I started letting him come over, and I should have never did that because it just, child, it turned into hell. Um, it turned into me not ever having no space. Cause he be coming over and he be eating, and child, he could eat. Okay, he started getting spoiled, and so I told him, I said, look, I said, if you gon' actually stay here, like I basically was sneaking him in, and my landlord didn't know, because she be gone for like 3 months at a time. What painting is this? It's a jellyfish painting. Uh, this is not like DAC or anything. This is just a painting from Timu. I'll show you what it's supposed to look like though. Give me 1 second. Uh, that's what it's supposed to look like right there. But yeah, so anyways, we decided that we was gonna do 3 days on, 3 days off, or whatever. So uh I let him stay with me 3 days on. So he would do uh 3 days at it's supposed to look good if I do it right. Um but yeah. Hopefully it turns out right. I be half asleep sometimes doing these, and they don't work out in my favor. But anyways, so back to the story. He ended up um he ended up living there practically, and he started helping pay rent. So I'm not complaining because I'm not paying full rent. I was only paying like $800 a month for like a master bedroom, like a 1 bedroom, 1 bath. I had an in suite bathroom, so I didn't have to share a bathroom with nobody. Baby, I was living it up. I had left Spectrum and started working for Truist Bank or whatever, and so I thought I was living it up. I was working remote from home, which was like the perfect job. Like everything was lining up for me to like really be able to live on my own. Um, the problem was, my landlord was like, "Look," she would come back and she'd see him and she'd be like, "He can't be here like this." And I'm just like, "What do you mean?" She was like, "Well, he's a nice guy. He's so sweet." Cause she told me, "Oh my gosh, he's so sweet. He cooks for you and he does this for you and that for you." And she was basically trying to compare what was going on with her so-called cousin in Barbados to what he do for me. And I was like, "Child," I said, "He is eating off of me." And I said, "He's eating on my damn stamps. And I can't, I barely got food for myself. If you sit here talking about some, oh, this is a good thing. No, he needs to get a consistent job. He's eating up all the food now." I said, and she was like, "Yeah." She was like, "But he's nice and everything, but he just can't stay here for those long periods." And I was just like, "You said 3 nights." She said, "Yeah, but," I said, "Yeah, and you never specified how that, because we was doing 3 days on, and then he would go stay in the tent for 3 days, and then he'd come back. But then he started getting used to staying with me so much that the tent got freaking stolen, and he didn't say nothing. And I spent $200 on that tent. I was hot. Okay, I'm sitting here thinking, oh. I told him, I said, "D," I said, "You need to be going to that tent." I said, because I said, or at least take it down if you're not gonna be over there like that. I said, because that tent was expensive. Honey, I got that tent from that was a I think a 3 or 5 person tent. Or no, I think it was like a 3 person tent or whatever. And it was one of them real nice tents. Like it took us a minute to put those up. To put it up. Like I was hot. So one day I'm talking about the tent and he was like, "Oh dang, I meant to tell you." And I'm like, "What?" And I was like, "Please don't tell me somebody took the tent." He said, "Yeah." He said, "Somebody took the tent." I said, "How long ago did they take the tent?" Because mind y'all, it had been a thunderstorm and everything, and I'm trying to figure out how was this man sick if you got a whole tent and you in the church field. So how was you sick? And he was like, "Oh well, yeah, some people who was coming out the woods nearby where I was at." And he said, "I think one of them took the tent." And I was so hot. Oh my gosh, because I went through so much, y'all. I took a bus to get that tent from one side of town to the other side of town to get that damn tent. I'm still mad about that tent. He was like, "Oh, I can give you the money back for it." I said, "It's not about the money, it's the principle." I make $21 an hour. I'm not worried about the money, sir. I'm worried about, and I'm work 40 hours a week, so I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the fact of the principle of all I had to go through to get that tent. And I'm like, hell, if you didn't want it, if you wasn't gonna use it, hell, I could have kept that tent. You know what I'm saying? That's money. That's hard earned money that I had to spend, and I think of how many paychecks I had to go through to buy that, like, or how much I had to go through and take a lift. I took a bus to, I think it's something that starts with a R. It's like some type of camping where you can just get a whole bunch of camping gear, and then what else did I do? And then I took an Uber back home. Anyways, the tent situation pissed me off, as you could tell. So after the tent situation, I don't know, I just started getting aggravated. And it wasn't necessarily, it was with his presence. I'm going to be real with you. I wanted my own space again, and I didn't have that. And he just was doing dumb stuff. And it's just like, why are you doing this stuff? Like, what's the rhyme or reason for you deciding that you're going to randomly stop working? Like, he just choose, oh, I want to work, and then I don't want to work. And I was like trying to be resourceful, trying to be a good girlfriend. Oh, well, I can help you, and da 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 da. Don't count yourself out. I'm trying to encourage him or whatever, because he was a felon, and I'm just like, you don't have to, like. So the backstory of him being a felon. Let's get into that. So when this man was maybe 23, he got arrested for armed robbery. And what ended up happening was he he didn't rob anybody, but he was associated with people who were. So at this time, what I was told is that his mom was really sick. She was essentially on her deathbed. He didn't really care about nothing and was just getting high all the time. And so he wasn't thinking about the people who was hanging around. He would hang with these two boys, and they'd be like, "Oh, we're about to go hit a lick. We'll be back." He didn't think anything of it. He like, okay, whatever. He just knew that whenever he hung around them, he got free weed, free objects, basically. So, he's like, okay, whatever. Well, ultimately, what ended up happening was they were hitting a lick. You know what hit a lick mean? They was going to robbing people. And so, one day he just started to ask. He was like, one day I just asked him like, "What is a lick?" Because y'all hitting a lot of licks. Like, what is a lick? And they was like, "Duh, bro, we robbing people." They was like, he was like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. Wait a minute. What do you mean y'all robbing people?" They was like, "Yeah, we've been robbing people, bro." They made him the getaway driver without telling him, and he was so high all the time he wasn't even thinking about it. He wasn't thinking nothing about it. And so they literally made him their getaway driver, basically. Anyways, so continuing on, um, a lady who was an eyewitness of the palm complexion called him out in court and said that he was the one who had robbed her, even though he wasn't. So he was wrongfully in prison, but whatever. You know, I tell people, people you hang around, if you hang around three alcoholics, you're gonna be the fourth one, And he didn't really get that, I don't think, and common sense just wasn't too common. So he was. I told him, I said, you were supposed to do like 15 years, right? For the time rob, because they robbed that lady at gunpoint, and he was like, I didn't know that. I'm just like, yeah, you were supposed to do 15 years, bro. Like, you got lucky. You were supposed to do 15 years in prison, and he got out in 2 years for good behavior. I was like, that's crazy. And the boys who he was doing this with or whatever, they were maybe 17 or 18, and they lied and said that because, or their lawyers told them to tell it as, oh, because he was the oldest, he was the mastermind behind it. How they got caught is he went to McDonald's or whatever, and they ended up using a stolen credit card to get McDonald's while they was with him, and they saw him in the driver's seat. They had no other way to tie him to that case, and he admitted what he did. Yeah, stupid. He admitted what he did with no lawyer present and was about to get 15 years for something that he didn't even do. because he's not even the type of person or about that life. This man he's never been with gunplay. Trust me. Anyways, so he was a very odd individual, very much, very extremely smart, but just did stupid shit. Um, the way it was posed to me was, oh, my family don't care about me. Oh, my family don't really F with me because I've messed up and made so many mistakes in the past. Meanwhile, his family is practically begging him to come around. How this situation ended up being worsened, I ended up finding out or being told by the landlord that we were staying with. She said, I know your lease is supposed to be up in December. She said, but I'm gonna need you to be out by October. And she told me that in August. Oh no, she told me she needed me to be out by December. Uh, I think no, she said November. And she said she needed me to be out by November, and that the lease was not renewing. So I was like, all right, whatever. And so she was like, yeah, she was like, my sister and my mom have fallen out. And, she's family, and I'm not just going to have her out here with no place to stay. Plus, she's pregnant with a baby, and da 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 da. So I was like, okay, no problem. So I started looking for another place. I ended up finding a real, real, real nice place. Way nicer than her place. It was only like 3 years old. I ended up staying in this townhome for some time, and I ended up moving there. Well, in the process of moving out, she was supposed to give me my deposit, and she claimed that she couldn't give me my deposit because of a spot the size of what do I got around here? That spot had to be the size of this water bottle, literally. And she was like, or circumference wise, and she was like, oh yeah, um, there's also some marks on the vanity, some dye on the vanity that I can't get off. Mind y'all, when I was staying here in the beginning, I had already told her you just use white vinegar. When you have marks that you can't get off, you use white vinegar to get them off. Because she said, I use soap, I use everything, and the marks won't come off. Well, you can get them off with white vinegar. It's a red dye from me dyeing my hair in the bathroom. So she was claiming, oh, I might have to get another vanity. Just lying so she didn't have to get back the deposit. Because she spent the deposit instead of putting it in the escrow account, is what happened. Anyways, so time goes on or whatever. Me and him, our relationship is on the rocks. Like, I'm ready to break up with him. And I kept telling him, I said, this ain't gonna work. And he was like, why? Why are you saying that? Don't say that. And I'm just like, no, it's not gonna work. I said, because you have made up in your mind that you're not gonna do what you need to do. I said, I'm trying to get you resources. I said, you're a felon. I had found a program in our city that was actually created by a felon where they help you get housing, they help you find a steady job, they help you get your first place, whole nine. It was an award-winning program, and they had openings. And he was like, nah, everybody who I trusted in the past, they really let me down, especially in the church, and da 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 da. And basically started blaming the men in the church for reasons as to why he wouldn't get his life together or refused to get his life together. Just the men, the examples I seen growing up in the church. He just always blamed everything on the church and the Bible, basically. Um, And so it just got old. I was like, look, I don't have time for this. At my last straw, we moved again. Like I said, the landlord asked me to move out. I moved into the new townhome. And the townhome, I did have a roommate who was the same age as me. She liked to party and have company over. I didn't. I'm not really a party person, or you be in my space or having all these energies in and out of my house. It's just not me. So, the landlord that I had or whatever, maybe like 2 years into us living together, she told me that her dad was building another property and that she was going to move back in with her parents and she was going to rent the bedroom out. She's like, unless you were interested, and she was trying to charge 1,300 for the master bedroom. And I said, no, I'm already paying 1,000 for this one, for the room, and this is just a 1 bedroom, 1 bath. Like, no. And so she was like, oh, okay, well, we're gonna see if we can find somebody. And that ended up being a roommate from hell. Uh, it was just a lot going on. Anyways, so with this ex, ultimately, uh, we broke up before we moved into the townhome. We broke up because I asked him. I said, okay, so with this, I said, are you like, I'm going to just stay in for a couple months, but you need to find your own place. That's what I said. You need to find your own place. I said, I'm giving you enough time, like 6 months, to save your money so you can put down a down payment, but you got to find your own place. I said, because this isn't going to work. We're not together, and for whatever strange reason, we're not even sexually active, sir. So what are we like? Like this ain't gonna work. I can't even have company over because you over here. And so when we moved into the new home, he like refused. He's one of those dudes. He didn't want to have sex. Like it was crazy. Like he didn't. He was like he didn't want to displease the Lord and all of this, and it was wild. Which now I get it now, but it's just like at the time it's like, bro, like we already done had sex several times. Like what do we? It's not like you're a virgin or something. Like what's really going on? And he was like, no, it's just he said it's not that I don't want you. He said because I definitely want you all the time. He said, but it's just a matter of I don't want to upset God, and I feel like I was closer to him when I was outside. And he had always told me if I need to, I'm gonna always go back. Like, and I was like, so you mean to tell me I did all this for nothing? Like, I literally took you off the streets, and you literally are willing to go back to the streets just so you could live by your rules and live how you want to live because you don't want to follow nobody's rules. It's crazy. So I was like, all right. At some point, I was like, bump it, y'all. It got to a point where he was living with some missionaries who came from California to North Carolina, and these missionaries, I consider them a cult. He claimed they wasn't a cult. I said they are a cult. It was a whole bunch of Russians. I said, honey, that's a cult. I said, what if 12 families done moved from California to North Carolina because they preacher moved? It's giving cult. No, it's not like that. It's not like that. They Christian. It's not like that. Okay, whatever. And how he met them was he took a Uber somewhere, and he just got out talking to the driver, and the driver was like, oh, I can help you out. I'm a missionary. We do have a spot in one of our houses that you can go into, thinking at some point he probably was gonna get rent from him, but he didn't know who he was dealing with. This man did not like to pay rent. When I asked him before we moved in, I said, hey, I said, I know we have the rent is supposed to be 1,000. And I was like, do you want my name just on this, or do you want both our names? He was like, well, I think it's just best that you just, put your name, because I don't know how much longer I'm going to be at the current job I'm at. I don't like how they treat me or how they talk to me. Da 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 da. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So I put my name down on the lease only, and that's how that went. Eventually, he tried to buck up at me. For anybody who doesn't know what buck up means, he tried to act like he wanted to fight me, and I had never seen him like that. He's never raised his voice. He's always been respectful. So he was a pretty good dude. He just his finances sucked completely. Like it was horrible. He was always cheap. He didn't want to go nowhere. He didn't want to do anything. I wanted to travel. He didn't. He wasn't well traveled to begin with. It was just like a whole bunch. And I told him, I said, I'm not marrying into this, bro. I said, you don't want to travel. You don't want to do anything. I'm well traveled for my age, but I would like to travel some more, especially when I had the funds. But it shouldn't be me footing the bill for everything and you just sitting here kicking your feet up on Clubhouse talking to chicken heads. So at some point, I had addressed a situation because there was a girl. Let me make sure y'all can see this. There was a girl who I was worried about because he was always talking to this girl, and I'm like, who was this girl that he be talking to or whatever? And I told him, I said at the old house, I was like, is this gonna be a problem? Like, am I gonna have to wash my ass? And he was like, no, 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 no. It's not even like that. Like, she left my sister in Christ. It's not like that, honey. Okay, so let's rewind. Let's go back to the part about the missionaries. So he goes and stays with these missionaries for approximately maybe a couple weeks, maybe maybe 1 to 3, maybe 1 month. He stays with these missionaries or whatever, and he just used to talk about how nasty they were. Like, oh my gosh, they're so nasty. Because he's a very clean man, and he prefers to be like a stay-at-home dad. He wants to basically be taken care of while you go out and work. Is what he want to do. When I moved into the new townhome, I was still working from home. So it wasn't really a problem for me, at least. Um, doing what I need to do. I think I'm using the wrong colors on these. There's a brown and then there's a black. And I think I'm using like a dark brown right here. Like there's a brown right there. Or there's a whole patch of brown right here. Right here along this line. And I'm wondering, I think I'm using the wrong colors. Anyways, so he ended up bucking up at me, and I ended up kicking him out, and that was the end of the relationship. Because I was like, yo, I done spent all these years trying to help you. I found out in the process that he was lying about everything. I spoke to his mom. His mom ended up revealing to me that he had a history of mental health issues. Spoke to his uncle. His uncle told me the same, that he used to be in and out of psych wards. And nobody bothered to tell me all this. I'm just like, so y'all let me date this man for 2.5 years, 3 years, and didn't bother to tell me that information, that this man has been institutionalized multiple times. So what if I would have got pregnant by this man? I would have had a kid who probably would be messed up mentally because he was getting his mental health issues from his daddy. So all the men on his dad's side had died from mental health issues or alcoholism. Every single male. He is the only male who hasn't. Around the time that I tried to kick him out, which was my birthday, around my birthday, my dad told me, like, babe, you need to get him out your house. And I was like, I know. Well, in the process of trying to kick him out, he ended up becoming, like, completely nonverbal. He would not respond um, to any, like, he just stopped eating, he stopped drinking water, the whole nine. He kind of went into this zombie-like state. And the only way that I can describe it is if you've ever seen the show, not Missing a Bride, but it's like I Almost Died, like, or whatever. Like, it's about stories of people who had near death experiences or whatever. Well, in a specific episode of that, they talk about in a specific episode they talk about how it was this couple on this boat, and the husband was about to die, and the husband ended up I don't know if he starved to death or what, but he started to hallucinate. And he started doing like these weird hand gestures like this. Oh, let me show you. Hold on. So he used to do this in front of him, like he would see stuff or whatever, like he was seeing some type of matter or whatever. And the lady on that show said within 24 to 48 hours, he died. So I ended up seeing this like way after me and him were together, but that night he was doing that constantly. He woke up in the night and he'd be like, D is not Jesus, D is not Jesus, D is not Jesus. And I'm just like, what the hell? He started chanting and rocking back and forth and claiming the devil was playing with his mind and all this. Child, it was a lot. It was a whole lot of. And he ended up having to go to the hospital. So it's like, dang, I can't kick him out now because he done went to the hospital. That kind of be insensitive if I just, kick him out and he has to go to the hospital. He also stopped paying he stopped paying like all bills and I was paying for myself. So let's go to RW. Give me 1 second. Oh, all right. So my W's. Oh. Well, ultimately he ended up getting kicked out and we broke up. And yeah, I moved on. My boyfriend currently is amazing. He's so thoughtful. He's so sweet. And yeah. that will conclude the end of this story time. If you guys like the story, make sure you comment, like, subscribe, but tell me what you would do if you were dating someone and eventually found out that they were completely homeless, despite them being a good person and being a gentleman, which is very hard to find nowadays. What would you do? All right, it's the end of the story time. And here's the section that we worked on. All of this right here. And some of this up in here. All right, peace.